Most people ignore tiny progress because it feels meaningless. One small action, one tiny improvement, one extra page, one short workout. Your brain looks at it and says, that won't change anything. And honestly, that's exactly why most people never grow. We naturally chase big results, big transformations, big motivation, big success stories. But tiny actions feel boring, too slow, too invisible. So people throw them away without realizing something important. Massive change almost always starts invisibly. That's why success feels so far away. You look at the mountain and immediately feel overwhelmed. Your goals look gigantic, your current position feels tiny, and your brain quietly starts thinking, how could I ever reach that? So instead of climbing, most people freeze before they even begin. Then they try something extreme. Huge goals, huge pressure, huge expectations. And for a few days, they push hard. But eventually they fall back down. Because motivation can create intensity, but systems create consistency. And consistency is what actually changes your life. This is where comparison becomes dangerous. You see someone successful, confident, disciplined, productive, and your brain compares their chapter 20 to your chapter 1. That destroys momentum. Because when progress feels too slow, people assume it's not working, so they quit early. Not because they failed, but because the results were still invisible. This is the trap most people never escape. They expect visible progress too quickly. But real growth usually happens quietly at first, especially in the beginning. Think about planting a seed. The first day looks the same. The second day looks the same. Even after a week, almost nothing changes visually. So impatient people walk away. They assume nothing is happening. But underneath the surface, growth already started. That's how improvement works too. Tiny actions begin changing you long before visible results appear. One workout doesn't transform your body. One page doesn't make you intelligent. One productive day doesn't build success. But repetition changes everything. And repetition is where compounding begins. Then, one day, the difference suddenly becomes visible. The tiny seed became a tree, and people call it overnight success. But it was never overnight. The progress was simply invisible for a long time. That's why patience is so powerful, because growth often hides itself at the beginning. The same thing happens with habits. One brick feels useless, but one brick every day eventually becomes a wall. That's the 1% rule. Tiny improvements repeated consistently. Not dramatic change, not massive motivation, just small actions stacking quietly over time. And this is where everything changes psychologically, because once you stop chasing instant results, you stop feeling disappointed every day. You stop asking, why am I not successful yet? And start asking, did I improve slightly today? That question is much more powerful because it focuses on process instead of emotion. This is why disciplined people often look calm. They aren't obsessed with huge daily victories. They trust repetition. They trust systems. They understand something most people ignore. Small actions become powerful when repeated long enough. That's why consistency beats intensity almost every time. Imagine improving just 1% daily. That sounds tiny, almost irrelevant. But small improvements compound, just like interest in a bank account. Tiny gains multiply over time, and eventually, the gap between consistent people and inconsistent people becomes massive. Not because of talent, because of repetition. One page daily becomes entire books finished. One workout becomes strength. One healthy meal becomes a healthier body. One focused hour becomes real skill. The actions themselves seem small, but your identity slowly changes through repetition, and identity is what creates long-term transformation. This is why tiny habits matter more than dramatic motivation. Motivation disappears constantly, but small systems survive bad days. That's important because successful people are not perfect every day. They simply avoid stopping completely. Even tiny progress keeps momentum alive, and momentum changes behavior faster than motivation. Eventually, the results begin overflowing into your life. Your confidence improves, your discipline improves, your focus improves. And suddenly, people think you became lucky. But they never saw the hundreds of invisible actions before the visible result appeared. That's the hidden power of compounding. Tiny effort, repeated consistently. Success usually isn't one giant breakthrough moment. It's small actions repeated longer than most people can tolerate. That's the uncomfortable truth. Most people quit during the invisible phase, the phase where effort exists, but visible reward does not. And that's exactly why consistency becomes rare. Imagine two people starting at the same place. One person quits early because progress feels slow. The other continues improving quietly every day. At first, they look almost identical. But over time, the gap becomes enormous. And eventually, their lives look completely different. That's the power of small, repeated choices. Your future is built by tiny daily decisions, not giant life-changing moments. Every repeated action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Every workout, every page, every focused hour, every small improvement. Your habits slowly shape your identity, and your identity shapes your future. So never underestimate small progress, because most massive transformations begin invisibly. One tiny step may not change your life today, but repeated long enough, it can change your entire future. That's the 1% rule, and the people who understand it eventually become impossible to stop.